Hey there, it's Wednesday, which means it's time for another Ask Alyssa Anything session where I'm answering all your questions about the traditional publishing industry, querying literary agents, and writing a better book. Thank you so much to anyone who has submitted a question. Keep them coming so I can continue on with these sessions. I'm really enjoying getting to speak to your questions more directly and hopefully help reassure you along your publishing and writing path. Before we dive in, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. If you haven't subscribed already, please do now to join this amazing community of writers and emerging authors. And go ahead and hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't already, grab my free resource in the description below. It is a worksheet I designed specifically for my YouTube community who have a current work in progress. It's going to help you take a step back and evaluate your own story to see where you could potentially improve it to take it to the next level, whether you are looking to query literary agents or just want to make sure it's in tip-top shape for self-publishing. It's also going to sign you up for my exclusive newsletter where I provide tips and insights not available anywhere on my channel, so you don't want to miss out on that. We have some great questions today, so let's dive right in. First question here, how long does it take for an agent to reply to your query, especially if they're going to reply positively? I read the comments on a specific agent's query tracker page, and the few people who got positive replies to their queries from her got them within a few hours. So can I assume this agent isn't interested if I haven't heard back quickly? Ooh, I'm really glad that you brought this up, especially the query tracker statistics, because they can frankly be misleading. In terms of giving you a range in which you can expect to hear back from a literary agent, to be honest, this varies very widely, depending on how the agent manages their own submissions. Every agent has their own process. Some do a batch review on a Friday, say. Some do a few queries every day. It really depends on their own working arrangements and their schedule. So your best bet is going to be to check the agent's website and or check their Twitter profile. A lot of agents I've been seeing posting on Twitter to say how far into their query queues they are, and they might post something like, if you haven't heard back from me, send it again because I responded to everything that was pending in my inbox. So those are the two places I would check, and I would use that as your primary source of information. Now, I know that Query Tracker gives you an estimate of where you are in an agent's queue, and other people can comment about their response times, but I would not read too much into this. It's totally possible that a literary agent just hasn't gotten to your query yet. They haven't read it, and that's why they haven't responded. Typically, once a literary agent opens the query, they are either going to make that decision to move forward or they are going to pass on it right then and there. However, there's also a case where maybe the literary agent got interrupted, they opened your query, but they didn't have a chance to go through the sample pages, and they're bookmarking it to come back to later. So just because you haven't heard back from a literary agent, don't assume it's a rejection just because other people got a positive reply in a quicker fashion. There's really no science to the querying process. The agent is going to review it when they have the time to review it, and until they have given you a rejection, it is still out there and it is not rejected yet. So keep waiting for the amount of time that the literary agent says is their estimated time frame. Honestly, even wait a little bit longer than that because a lot of agents are backlogged right now. And in the meantime, keep sending out more queries. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that does turn into a positive reply. Here's another question. I hear a lot about advances for authors. My understanding is that no royalties will be received by the author until the author's book earns out their advance. Would a publisher refuse to publish an author's book if they declined any advance? This is an interesting proposition, but frankly, it's unlikely that a traditional publisher, especially a Big Five publisher, is going to be open to any changes in the structure of their contracts. And in almost all cases, they're going to offer you an advance, which is a lump sum that you get dispersed to you, typically in about 4 installments, no matter how many copies your book sells. That's the beauty of the advance. You don't have to sell any copies. You could sell 1 copy or 10 copies or 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 copies. You still get to keep that money for yourself. The benefit is you get the royalties on top of that if, as you say, your book earns back for the publisher the money that they have already paid you up front in advance. That's why it's called the advance. So it actually benefits you monetarily as the author to get the advance because in most cases, books don't earn out their advance, which means by opting for an all royalty deal, you would have actually made less money than the advance, if that makes sense. So say a publisher is going to give you $10,000 in an advance for your book, you get to keep that money. But if you say, oh, I don't want the advance, I'm going to only have royalties, and then you only sell 400 copies, which equates to $5,000, say, don't quote my mouth here, this is just all hypothetical, you actually sold yourself short of the extra $5,000, you see? So the advance actually benefits you, so I really don't see a situation where you would want to leave that on the table. Remember, it doesn't mean you're never gonna see any royalties. It just means you're not going to see them until and if the advance earns out. You're still earning those royalties. They're basically just going back to the publisher first, and then they will come to you eventually. Here's another question. What does it mean to have an adult voice versus a YA voice? What is the difference? How can you tell? This is a really great question because the lines between adult and YA have been blurring more and more recently, and we're seeing a lot of novels fall into what we call this crossover realm, where they can be enjoyed both by a YA audience and by an adult audience. When it comes down to sorting out the voice between the two, I really think of it more in terms of the characters. In YA, it is very unlikely you're going to have a main character over the age of, say, 21 or 22. And if the novel is in first person, the age of the character is also going to be reflected in the way they speak and the voice that comes through in the narrative. An older character is going to have a different vocabulary, a different style of speech, and talk about different things than a 18, 19, 20-year-old character, right? So if you're concerned about whether your book is YA or adult or not, I wouldn't think so much about the style of writing as much as you think about the characters and the content of the story, the plot. What are the themes that you're discussing? What struggles are the characters grappling with? And does that suit the younger audience, or does it suit a more mature adult audience? Now, with YA, in general, you do want to have a bit more of an accessible reading level just because that audience is younger. But I would say that the actual style of the text itself is secondary to the content of the characters' journeys. I would really focus more on that when classifying your book. We have time for one more question today. What do agents actually do after the book deal is done, advance paid, and the book is published and in the world? Great question. So your work with the agent doesn't end after your book is sold and published. Depending on how your book is doing, your agent is going to be continually trying to sell additional rights. So say it takes off in the US and it's a bestseller, they're now going to negotiate with international publishers and try to get international editions sold. And each of those book deals is going to come with an advance as well. They might also be trying to sell film rights if they haven't already, or other sub-rights like audiobook editions if they haven't already. So there's a lot more they can do with that specific book project even after its first edition is published. In addition, you are likely going to be talking about what your next project is. And if your agent is editorially inclined, as many of them are, they're going to be almost like a beta reader and an editor for you. You're going to work through your ideas. Maybe you're going to show them draft pages. They're going to give you feedback. You're going to have that editorial back and forth with them for your next book, if you do have a next book. So your work with the literary agent does not end once your book is published. You're going to continue to have that relationship with them. I hope you enjoyed today's AMA session. If you have a question you'd like to ask me, drop it in the comments below. This is the cue I use when I go through and answer these questions, and I'd love to hear what's on your mind. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and grab that free story self-assessment waiting for you in the description below. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.